And so it begins.
Hi, and welcome to Milla's Non-Combat Interviews, where I interview different people regarding different aspects of non-combat in the game of Amtgard. And tonight I am here with the awesome Haliax Duskstrider.
Hello. Good evening.
I'm just going to ask you a little bit about yourself to open up here. How did you start in Amtgard?
So a while back, when I was in Kentucky, I lived in Louisville, and one time one of my friends came over with her boyfriend at the time, and he introduced me to the idea of LARP. I had, seen a couple of things out and been like, I would like to actually maybe try that at some point, but I didn't have any connections to the community, didn't really know what to look for or where to go, who to talk to get started. And I wasn't, I don't know, I don't know if brave is the right word. Kind of is, but like, it wasn't a focus of something that I was like, I really want to go and do this thing because I'm super interested in it. It was I might really enjoy this, but I don't really have time to go and start a hobby type thing. But then my buddy, his name was Watt. It's still Watt. His name has not changed. Had me come out one time, and so I came and joined his group at what at the time was called Maddox Keep at Iroquois Park in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was like, "All right, buddy, get up in there. This is the game. Here, take a short sword and go learn how to play wacky bats." And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's do this." And so it sort of started from there. And I started out playing a monk, and then I discovered after putting myself out and going to my first event at Bridge Wars 2017, yeah, 2017, that monk was not my jam. And so another friend of mine at the time, Paint, was like, "Hey, you should try out Assassin." And that's how I started playing my like primary class in the game. And I started out as a poor little nooblet that was just kind of a nerd, as many of us do. And I got into sewing almost immediately and got into making stuff out of or stuff for weapons pretty quickly too. And, just dabbled around with things quite poorly for a long time until I sort of found some niche areas that I was interested in. That's sort of how it all started back in 2017, and it's gone from there.
Nice. I didn't realize that you started in 2017. Like, for some reason, I thought that you'd been here like way longer.
No, I guess I don't know. I don't think I count as old guard, but I've been around since like the very beginning of official adoption of V8. I think is if I recall correctly. I don't know the exact timeline because I never played V7. I heard people talking about, back in the day with V6 and V7, and I was like, you guys are old. But I started back when V8 was first adopted. So,
And how would you say your role in Amtgard evolved more over time? Well, I noticed that you said you started off with fighting Monk, and then you eventually ended up focusing on other things, like alongside fighting. So how would you say that role has evolved over time?
so after my first couple of forays out into doing Amp Guard, I didn't really have, garb or anything. And so I went on a visit to my parents in Texas. And I was like, "Hey, mom, I want to make a costume for this thing." And so she helped me pattern out and design and sew my first garb, which at the time I didn't understand that quilted fabric would be considered gambeson. I was just like, I'd like to do this in quilted fabric because it's heavy and it'll be thick and useful, especially in the winter. And so I made sort of a double-breasted jacket as my first piece of garb. My mom helped me make it, and I was like, well, I think 2017 I must have been, or no, I was 26, turning 27, and she taught me how to sew. And so then I kind of got into sewing. And after I made my first gambeson, I really liked it, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to design another one in black because you got to be edgelordy, right? If you're going to play assassin, you got to wear black. And so I made myself another coat in the same style with the same pattern. And then I did the exact same thing again with yet another coat, which became like my tournament garb in the same style with the same pattern. And so I repeatedly used the same pattern until I got really good at it. But then I learned how to do French seams. I learned how to do what else? Did double layered fabric, linings and stuff. I learned how to do linings actually much more recently, but I sort of figured out how to do that together in combination with other sewing techniques to hide the raw edges of fabric over time. And most of it's really been experimentation and like occasionally going and looking at YouTube videos and stuff like that. So I've been doing sewing and stuff for a while, making my own garb. The only thing I've never been able to figure out so far is how to make pants properly. I just can't do it. I don't know why. It shouldn't be that hard, but I cannot figure out how to pattern it properly. It's the hardest thing in the world. Don't know why. So, I learned how to sew and then, still doing fighty wax and stuff like that, learning how to play assassin real good. And then, playing around with other classes. And then I was like, you know what? I actually really want to make some armor. And so I had done a couple of little small projects that netted me my first and second owl for like equipment. I think I made a sword and a sword frog, and that was my first two owls. And then my buddy Watt also was like, "Hey, bud, I don't know if you're into this, but we can get a huge order of fluted 16 gauge aluminum plates, and you can make lamellar armor that would get you 6 point armor. Do you want me to add you onto the order?" And I was like, you know what, sure, why not? Let's figure out how to do this. And so then I think a year and a half in, maybe 2 years, not even 2 years, like a year and a half in, I started making lamellar armor. That was like my thing that I started doing. And I made multiple kits with those large tombstone fluted plates. A number of other people have used those as well. Varl, Watt, who else? Just a bunch of other people have also used those plates for armor. Big Head has as well. He's got a whole set that's like that. And then I started, so I made like 4 or 5 sets of lamellar armor in progressively more complicated ways, adding thin leather around the edges of it to like reduce chafing and things like that. And then I also had another buddy of mine, Sicarius, who was like, "Hey, you want to make armor, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." After my first couple of sets, I need some more armor for my assassin, and he was like, "Let's get some leather going." And so he showed me like the first leather armor. He made it primarily, but like I helped him do it. He showed me how to like pattern it out and how to do rivets and things like that. And I was like, "This is really cool." And I didn't really touch that for a while because I was so busy doing my lamellar stuff and experimenting with that. I don't know when I really shifted away from doing lamellar and metal to almost exclusively leather. I guess it must have been tail end of the pandemic because I started working on what I consider my Masterhood project for my Master Owl, though I have made better stuff since. And it was a mixed media of stainless steel metal plates that I designed out a pattern for, and I sent it to another buddy of mine, Hogman, who had a contact with a water cutter, and he patterned out the steel, or I patterned out the steel cuts and sent it over to him, and he got it all cut up for me and sent, and then I shaped the metal and I stuck it on my leather cuirass and other pieces and built this really cool thing that also had lamellar on it. Also had lamellar. It was like that was still like a thing that I was using actively. And then after that, I think I stopped using metal entirely. I stopped doing anything with lamellar, and that was about 2022 was the last time. And ever since then, it's only been what 4 years now. I guess not
Yeah.
even technically. We're in day 5 of 2026, so like not even where I started just doing straight up leather, and so I made several different kits of leather. Just even in the past year, I am currently wearing my most recent kit, which has these cool leather gauntlets that are based on a pattern from Prince Armory, but I have modified for my purposes and combined them together with another pattern that I have again also modified from Dark Horse because everybody uses Dark Horse patterns because they're just good. They're good patterns.
Yeah, I
With
noticed you said Prince Armory. Back when
yeah,
I did
so the
leatherworking, I loved their patterns.
oh, Prince Armory patterns are top notch, and their tutorials are also very useful. So for those of you who are listening to this, if you're thinking about getting into any sort of leather work, or you can do faux leather, you can figure out ways to do this with foam, like if you're trying to do cosplay type stuff, you can use those patterns, and they're really nice. They're really good. They have a really good Mandalorian helm pattern. They've got a variety of different full armor kit patterns, and you can like mix and match things to make it work in your particular style. I highly recommend them. I also highly recommend Dark Horse if you're just trying to figure out how to make some armor because they're simple, straightforward, fairly easy to do. It's really hard to screw them up, and it's they're easy to adjust and refine to whatever it is that you want. So yeah, I guess over time I have focused primarily on, in my non-combat aspects, making lots of armor almost exclusively for myself because I am selfish and I like to look cool, but occasionally I do dabble in other stuff and some garbing and a little bit of artistic stuff with dragon-esque work. I'm not going to say that I'm like a super genius of leather because there are people that are way better at leather work than I am, but like I do pretty good. I do pretty good work. I'm proud of it. Most people that see what I do and they're like, "That's amazing. You're amazing. Wow. Can you make stuff for me?" And I'm like, "Thanks." And maybe, and then I just sort of leave it at that and then never actually commit to doing anything for anyone else because that way I can make myself happy. Although I'm beginning to see the value in doing things for other people rather than myself because I don't need more armor. I have so much. I just like it so much. Yeah, anyways, so I think that answers your question fairly thoroughly.
Yeah, I was gonna say it answers a lot of my questions pretty thoroughly. Awesome. So now we can jump right into some additional non-combat questions, just because, yeah. So if somebody wants to get more involved in, say, armor making, leatherworking, garbing, where would you where would you suggest they start?
Okay. Let's start with garbing because that's probably the easiest and most forgiving of the options. Leather, and particularly leather armor, is an extremely expensive hobby, and so you want to know at least a little bit of what you're doing before you like go and spend a bunch of money on material and stuff. Whereas with garbing, you're not necessarily investing a huge amount of funds into fabric necessarily. You can get very expensive fabrics, but like if you're just starting out, it's probably better to buy like mostly non-stretchy linen blends, linen look. You don't necessarily have to buy like straight up real linen because that can get expensive very quickly. But like I have had a lot of success with linen look fabrics. That's what they described it on Joanne.com, but like that is now semi defunct because they went out of business. You can find some semi synth fabrics. You just don't want to have anything stretchy. If you are new to sewing, if you are new to garbing, you don't want to work with stretchy fabrics. You will have a bad time. As I discovered with my second garb project, it just ended up being super stretchy around the collar, and I was not happy with that. So yeah, don't worry about having like the highest quality material. Just do not get stretchy fabrics to start with garbing. There are lots of patterns you can buy online. I tend to find that those are hard to follow because you have to know which version of the pattern you got to cut out once you print it and put it together. It's also doable once you have a little bit better of an idea to pattern out your own stuff using butcher paper. But if you really want to just start out safely, you can do what's called a T tunic. T tunics are easy, they're very straightforward, they require only a few stitch lines. They're very forgiving, or they're generally fairly forgiving until you like cut away too much fabric, in which case then like you get a little too cozy around the chest area, it gets a little uncomfortable. That's a little harder to fix, but you can do a T tunic with very little knowledge or skill. You can always use a shirt that's like one or two sizes larger than your size shirt as a patterning stencil as well. And definitely look up a video on how to make a good collar because turns out collars are actually kind of hard and
Hmm.
they take practice. Getting like the head hole and stuff right, getting it the right size so that it'll fit you properly without being too big or too small can be a little tricky, and it's okay to like try a couple of different times. If it's too small, you can always make it bigger. If it's too big, you can't really make it smaller. So just bear
Hmm.
that in mind. So that's my thoughts on garbing. Let's shift to leather work because then, as a corollary, then you can get into armor work. So leather work, you really, when you're wanting to start out with leather work, if your goal is to make pieces for yourself, it's going to depend on the kind of piece that you want. For most purposes in Amtgard, that is that you want something that's going to be rigid and sturdy that you can use as armor. But that doesn't have to be the case. You can make bags, you can make all kinds of things. You can make belts. Belts are probably the safest place to go if you're trying to do something with leather where you can practice skills to make things artistically, I don't know, pleasing. Aesthetically pleasing, I think, is where I was going with that. Belts are probably the easiest place to start because, generally speaking, you can buy a belt blank from Tandy Leather or other online retailers fairly inexpensively. So, in terms of leather, it's always a safe bet to start with like a leather belt blank because you can start to learn the how tooling works and how you can paint or dye a leather belt with little, fairly little investment. There are a range of tools you can purchase to do like artistic embellishment for armor or for other things. You can make leather belt favors. You can, again, tool leather belts that you can buy. Again, there's a range of tools you can purchase from really cheap ones in large bulk to very particular and expensive ones. As it turns out, individual leather tools for tooling can run for the quality ones, they can run like $10 to $20 for a single tool. Those are fairly small, like smaller than pencil size or shorter than pencil size tools. For real, like the really good ones. My more recent purchases for like nicer smooth face leather beveler for making my embossed stuff on like my armor. I know that I'm talking about something that can be seen, but like I've designed these flame patterns that are have like debossed edges around the outside of the flames on my armor, and the tools that I purchased for that, each of those, I think set was like $25, and those are like mid
Oh.
grade, but they're really nice. You can buy individual ones for like $12 to $15 a pop. I think I got lucky and found a set that was high quality and not crazy expensive. I might be wrong. They might have been $30 for the entire set. But anyways, so individually, they can run to be fairly expensive. That's not usually what you want to do when you're just starting out. You can also buy like really crappy versions of large tool sets for like $40 on Amazon, but um, it also comes with just all kinds of different things that you can use and practice with. Swivel knives are fairly cheap. You can buy a single swivel knife with an extra blade for $6. Yeah, so no, like cheap swivel knives, they're pretty.
They're pretty ubiquitous, and they're fairly. You don't need to like have a super fancy swivel knife to be able to do really good cuts. You just need to make sure that you've properly stropped the blade, or you've purchased a ceramic blade that's of high quality. But those can add up to be more expensive. So I don't recommend that. But yeah, like get yourself a leather belt and like try to figure out how to pattern on stuff. Watch videos. Watch lots of videos. There are tons of really good resources on YouTube for leather work, especially from Weaver Leather Supply. The guy that runs those for the leather element videos, he does a really good job of explaining stuff in a simple way, and it's fairly straightforward to follow his methodology. That can then be scaled to making armor. Find yourself some cool patterns that you want to try out. Again, I strongly recommend starting with some dark horse patterns. They're good patterns. They will serve your purposes. They are very common in Amtgard because lots of people use them, but lots of people use them for a reason. It's because they're easy to do and they provide you with leather armor that is providing appropriate coverage to different hit locations. So then, you can min max your areas with gambeson and other things to do in between. I think leather armor is way easier to do than chainmail. And so I will never do my own personal chainmail hauberk or anything like that. Although you can purchase a chainmail hauberk for cheaper probably than you can make one out of leather. Yeah, leather cuirass is going to be way more expensive than a chainmail hauberk because you can buy like mass-produced chainmail for way cheaper than the supplies it needs to make the leather one.
I know a lot of people mention that they only use specific leather dyes. Is
Okay.
there a specific one you recommend to for people to either use or stay away from? I'm sorry, I'm asking this for my own curiosity.
Oh, no, I'm happy to answer. That's actually a really good idea. So, my most recent armor set uses the Phoebing's Black Pro dye. Um, if you're going to use Phoebing's dyes, I recommend using the Pro dyes because um, they already are oil-based dyes that
Hmm.
are not just purely alcohol-based. Phoebing's regular leather dyes are cheaper and sometimes they work well, but the one that I used that was not black is turquoise. And that one, as
Oh.
it turns out, is very finicky and really easy to mess up. And I don't know why that is. I haven't been able to figure it out because it does things that I have never seen a leather dye do when I
Hmm.
do my pieces. Like it dyes very oddly around cut edges,
Hmm.
even though there should be no reason why it would do that. Very bizarre. Um, and so it creates this unevenness in areas that just is very upsetting in my finished product. And then again, I'm not sure if it comes through, but like this gauntlet, part of it was wet at one point because I was shaping it. And
Hmm.
then after I did that, I thought that the leather was dry, but it turns out that it had sort of made it not properly. Anyways, so it ended up having this weird little pattern that I've never seen happen with any other dye. And so it created a weird unevenness to that section of it. And I just sort of stuck with it because I was like, I'm not cutting more leather. I'm not doing this. It's okay. It can be imperfect. It is all right for that to be the case.
It also
Um,
does kind of look like fire too, which I kind of dig it.
oh, I didn't really see that. But you know what? If you like it, that's cool. I still think it's really awesome. I'm just disappointed in some
Mm.
aspects of it. It's okay. So I don't recommend any of the Thieving's regular dyes. I really don't recommend the Thieving's turquoise. It takes a lot of dye to get that to a darkness or a depth of color that will hold up. And it doesn't hold up well under sunlight over time, is what I have found. But because I'm going for a certain aesthetic, I actually want it to fade out to a like darker gray or green over time, and that's cool. That's okay with me. Angelus dyes are also really good, but those tend to be very, very concentrated, and so you actually have to dilute those frequently. And you want to dilute that. If I, you probably need to look this up, and don't necessarily take this advice as gospel, but like using 99% rubbing alcohol or something like that, I think is what TB and I have used in the past for like the Angelus purple dye
Angela's purple dye is very, very concentrated. It comes out looking beautiful, but it's really easy to overdo it. So yeah, dilute those Angelus dyes. Um, and I'm sure that there are recommendations that Angelus can provide direct. Other cool things you can do other than dyeing, you can also paint leather with acrylic paints.
Mhm.
I actually like to use silver and gold paint pens, paint markers, and those end up working quite well. I don't recommend white with a paint marker. I actually think that paint markers don't do a good job with white. You really do need to like use actual paint, and Angelus is a great company for leather paints, and they have all kinds of products that can go with that. That's how I've learned most of my stuff is that I've experimented around and then discovered that some things work and some things don't.
As a fighter and somebody who participates in the non-combat side of things, do you feel like non-combat contributions tend to receive enough attention in Amtgard?
I think that at certain events, in certain groups, it is either more valued or less valued. I have seen certain events where the non-combat aspects of it were
Mhm.
done in such a way as to be like, all right, we're doing this to add this in to like check a box, and that doesn't feel good to me. And then I've also seen events where instead of it being just done as a check a box thing, it's actively integrated and appreciated, and it's got its own like showcase piece of the event, which makes it really cool. I think it was not this previous Bridge Wars in Rising Winds, but 2 years ago. No, wait, it was it a June event? It might have been June event. Um,
Scholomance?
where? Which one?
Scholomance?
No, I was not that one. June event 2024. I want to say they had a really cool like a carnival-esque thing. And that was cool. That was fun. And I really appreciated it. It wasn't like super big, but it had its own space and it was something that was not fully centralized, but like it was there and you were going to run into it if you were walking around. And you might decide that looks like it'd be a goofy, fun time for me and my buddies to do. And that's what it ended up being, right? It was hilarious and funny, and the non-com NPCs were cute and silly, and it was great. I have seen things in Crystal Groves where the non-combat aspects were very strong, especially at this most recent event that they ran in October, their fall coronation. They did How to Train Your Dragon, and the non-combat aspect of that was you got a little dragon character and you raised it and you gave it stats through little mini side quest things that were not part of the main battle stuff. It was like in addition to, and then it had its own set aside time where you would take your dragon that you had trained and grown its stats and practiced with into a competition with a bunch of other people that had their stat dragons, and it was like a little board game that they ran together. It was a little board game that they ran together, and it was very cool and very silly. And the little kids that were at the event got to do it, and the big adult kids that were at the event got to do it. They all had a good time, and it was very loud and very exciting from what I saw. And there was a lot of people that were involved in doing it, and it was super cool. It was great. I loved it. And then they had like little dragons being hidden around, little dragon eggs being hidden all over the event site, and you could go on a search and you would find one and bring it back to the event runners, and they'd give you rewards and stuff like that. They had color in your dragon and make it fancy and turn that in, and then you could like make that be your little dragon character. And so I was like, man, these are all really cool and really weird and wild and non like not exactly non traditional, but like there was a variety of different cool dragon things that it were not like your basic giant lizard with big arms and scary wings and big angry face. It's like floral dragons and other weird things. And I was like, these are really cool. These are great. And so then people would like grab them and they take them over to the table and they color it in. So I spent like 45 minutes doing that as a non-combat thing, and it was great fun. And I was just chilling. I didn't have to go out and beat people with a stick to have a good time. It was great. It was very integral to the theme of the event. So if it's done well and you have motivated people that can come up with cool ideas of how to do it, certain communities are really good at making non-combat aspects of Amtgard really fun and really cool and important. And it's not all just wacky bats with yelling.
That sounds like an incredibly fun event.
It
Gosh,
was
I love
great.
Dungeons and
It was
Dragons.
so good. It was one of the best events I think I've ever gone to. I got such a kick out of it. It was a really good time.
With your service and stuff, what
Mhm.
exactly has your service in the game entailed?
Okay, that's a very broad question, and it's actually a great one. I've done a lot of different things. I have volunteered myself, not being on the cleaning team, to go recycle plastic bottles and try and clean up the trash and do other stuff like that. I've done trash crat a couple of times. I have done not security, event services crat at least once, possibly more times than that in different aspects. I have been on various event teams, not necessarily in leadership, but like as a grunt worker, because you need those. I have done gate. I have helped set up battle games. I have acted as a warcrat. I've run games and acted as a warcrat at events. And this is all stuff that I'm talking about that's in events. But like, you can go back to park stuff, and in terms of that, like, I've, you know, run ANS tournaments at local level. I have acted in leadership positions to like make things happen. I have developed battle game write-ups. I have executed those battle game write-ups. I have been the guy that goes and helps out whoever's trying to set up the game, set it up, and then clean it up later. I mean, I think these are all mostly, except for like, with the exception of like event stuff, these are all things that everybody kind of does at least once in a while, here and there. I have taught classes on how to do X, how to do Y, how to do leather work, how to do tooling. I have cooked. I have acted as an RP based security guard in like court things for funsies. What else? I currently serve on the board of directors as the treasurer for Crystal Groves. I
It's cool.
That's kind of a bigger one, and that's sort of in a leadership position. But I do it because I actually like being involved in the decision making of how we want to run our particular group as a business, as a nonprofit business, and make sure that we are like above board with things and being part of like various audits, and not necessarily audits, but like doing supervisory aspects of our community in order to make sure that we are doing things that are good and healthy and
Mhm.
positive for Amtgard and for the Kingdom of Crystal Groves. Yeah, so I've done a lot of stuff. Do you have anything in particular that you want to ask about with that?
I might get into your leadership in park offices and whatnot in a bit, if that's all right.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, just kind of,
Do you want me to just like go from there? Absolutely. I'd be happy to. I think my most successful role that I have acted as in terms of park office has been as champion for the park, because it is probably the most friendly player to new player to leadership type position, because you get to come up with the games, you get to come up with like, if there's a story, you have that, you create the story arc for that. You get the people to do the things that are both combat and non-combat involved uh, activities. You get to be the one that decides those things. In a larger park setting, it can be extremely rewarding. In a smaller park setting, sometimes it can be kind of boring. But that, I think, is true of any extremely small park, like where I'm currently at. I did a stint as the monarch there, but like doing a stint in any officer position at my current park, which is like probably the smallest shire, not the actual smallest shire, but the smallest like really truly active shire in our kingdom. We have regularly, if we can get people out, it's like 3 to 4 people per park day. It's not big. There's not a lot to do with that. But when we've got a larger group, let's say we got 8 or 9 people, you can actually get a good game going with that. And so then like you can design a game and you can execute that game and have a good time with it. I like to think that I make fun and interesting terrain obstacles when I design my games. And they don't have to be really particularly complicated. It could be like carry the heavy objects or like escort the payload. Um, they could be capture the flag. You know, your very basic ones, but like what makes it interesting is having an interesting layout. How do you make it so that people can't just like run at each other and just kill the fuck out of each other immediately? Like that's boring. We can do that all day. That's no fun in an open field. Make it more complicated. So, like in terms of park leadership, yeah, like I've had the most fun acting as a champion. I fiddled with Regent a couple of times. It's not particularly complicated. I have been tapped by current leadership to potentially take up Kingdom leadership or Kingdom Regent at some point.
Oh.
I don't know when I'm going to do that. I haven't committed to that. That committing to a kingdom level position is like, oh, it's slightly intimidating. However, we need new blood in those positions. If nobody ever volunteers, then it's the same people doing it over and over again, and then they get burnt out. And then you don't have anyone in positions of power. And then you get crappy people in those positions, and those crappy people suck at it unless they figure out how to get good at it. But you want to, not burn out your good people. And they, in order to not burn out, need to be actively seeking out individuals that they think would be good for it, which is why I'm like, you know what? I might actually do Kingdom Region. I think it'd be good for me as a next step in the direction that I'm going. That being said, like my park is so small that if nobody is champion, then nobody, like if I'm not champion, then basically no one's champion, which is its
Yeah,
own problem. It's
I
its own
feel
difficult
that.
problem.
I feel that. Like the Point of Winter's Night, I'm the monarch of it right now, and we get like regularly like four, sometimes five people who come out.
Mm.
So we're kind of in the same situation. Like we're really going to be pushing recruitment here in a couple months.
One of the things that I tried to do when we first got to this location was that I wanted to do one of those come try LARP days. And right now, up in my attic, I have 30 nearly complete boffers that
Hmm.
I like half finance. I paid for half of it, and then my other buddy also paid for the other half of it. But we've never actually like nailed down a date and found a location to do it. And we discovered that if we were going to do this and we want to do it the right way, we will more than exhaust our park coffers if we want to really do it, which is not feasible.
So if you want help, please let me help you. I am happy. Like if your park needs, I could even make your park stuff they can use for social media. I'm happy to make posts for y'all. Just hit me up. Let me know. Alrighty, so you've already talked a lot about your ANF stuff.
Yeah,
I do
that's
have one question for you.
go ahead.
Is there a dream project or dream craft that you would like to do one day?
I already make a lot of stuff that I really like as it is. If I could really get good at something, because I have dabbled in boffer making and plastidip and other stuff with shields. That's something I haven't talked about. I've actually done some foam work stuff. I've got a big old pile of foam over on my right now that's just like waiting for me to make my next shield. I would really like to figure out a way to do it right, like a mobile suit Gundam wing sort of buckler-esque shield that looks just awesome for my left arm because that would do it for me. I don't
That
think
sounds badass. Do
I
it.
don't I don't think that particular design is effective in Amtgard, but like I think it'd be cool as hell. Rule of cool. I mean, and as I stated before this interview started, like my goal with everything I do, and this has been this way for as many years as I can remember at this point, is to be the coolest kid at my LARP. And the way to do that is with hella awesome drip. And most of that comes from good armor, although it can come from really good garb. And if you can combine the two, that's even better.
And my last ANS question for you before we jump into other things. Do you have a favorite ANS tourney style? You mentioned you were Regent before, and as someone who might be going into Kingdom Regent, is there one that you can specifically get behind?
I straight up hate ANS tournaments. I like ANS showcases. I think those are healthier. I hate the idea of there being like an overall winner. I think it's cool for you to go in and get feedback. I think that's extremely helpful. I guess I sort of technically have, not technically, this isn't technical. I have what I suppose would be considered mixed feelings about the idea of like scoring because in many ways you've got people who may be somewhat familiar with certain art styles, and you've got people who might be completely unfamiliar with certain art styles trying to assign numerical values on a semi-sliding scale for different aspects of a presented work. And you should not, in my opinion, be saying this person who made this really, really intricate, fancy garb should be judged as a higher level of art and score as overall better than this person who sang a bardic. Those are not the same art. Why are you comparing them? How can you say this person won the overall competition because this is the one that we all liked the most when you only heard this person sing it like once, the one time?
Mhm. And also on top of that, most stuff just doesn't translate well when you're like putting stuff up against each other. Like, how can a shield really, go up against, I don't know, like a really intricate chainmail necklace or something, you know?
Right. It's
Yeah,
the
like
scope and the general artistic aspects of those two things are completely different. I agree.
like bring back categories.
Yeah. If you have if you have an adequate amount of items, you could break that into categories and then be like, this was the best armor piece that was done. This was the best piece of full court garb. This was the best chain necklace. This was the best plastidip item, etc. Whatever it might be, because comparing those things to each other is just, I think, wholly inappropriate. But you can say the judges overall really liked these 5 items from a showcase and be like, nobody was the winner, so I guess judges is not the right idea. But like the event runners of the ANS showcase, these are the Regent's Choice items. The
Yeah.
Regent the Regent people liked these the most. But that doesn't discount everyone else doing a really great job with their stuff. And here's your feedback. Go have a good time. Here are your awards because you didn't have to win. You just had to do something really cool that showed growth.
Yeah, I really like showcases.
Yeah.
So, do you RP a lot in the game?
I dabble, but mostly no. I can speak on my character's behaviors, but it's I guess a more bombastic version of who I am as a person with a little bit more edginess. Even when I'm playing anti-paladin, I still act like a paladin. That's Haliax's general demeanor is paladinness.
Alrighty. I'm going to talk to you about your Masterhoods. You do have 3 of those. So,
Yay!
what does receiving Masterhood and your chosen paths mean to you? And also, before we get into this, would you like to tell the audience what your Masterhoods are? Because I believe we spoke about that before we started recording.
Yes, we did actually, didn't we? 'Cause we were talking about the fact that I'm being triple belt knighted here in this coming July. So I am a Master Owl, a Master Rose, and a Battlemaster now. I'm quite proud of that last one. It feels real good to me, even though there's still areas of growth that I have in battle gaming. Master Owl, I've had a couple of conversations with various individuals about this. When I first received my Master Owl, I felt not necessarily like I was undeserving of it, but more like I hadn't met other people's goals for what they thought I should be. And I was very self-conscious about that. And I've also always been, and this is true in all aspects of my life, extremely hard on myself and very critical. And that's not necessarily the best way to be. It's caused damages in a variety of aspects of my life. But when I first got my Master Owl, I was both mega super hyped because I was like, yeah, and also like felt a little self-conscious about it and felt like I had to continue to prove myself. I have since proved myself multiple times, and I'm like, you know what? I am a Master Owl. I have made, again, many kits of leather armor that I think are hella sweet and really help me remind myself as I'm staring over it, like what I consider my true Masterhood project, which is my anti-paladin flame armor. So cool and has a Mandalorian cat helmet. I have proven to myself multiple times over that I am a Master Owl. And that doesn't mean that I'm not still learning new aspects of how to do my craft better. I still go on Reddit and I have multiple leatherwork Reddit groups that I just sort of lurk in and see people's posts. And I look at their cool stuff and I'm like, that's really awesome. And then I look at the feedback that they're asking for and I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really good point. I should consider that the next time I do this or that or use this particular material or oh, that's an interesting way in order to do things. Maybe I should try that instead of what I did this last time, type things. So I'm still picking up stuff. A masterhood in Amtgard should be, in my opinion, and this is, particular to serpents and I think, not someone who is a professional grade artisan in whatever area that they're trying to work on. If they are, that's awesome. That's really cool. You don't have to be a professional. We're in a game of make believe shenaniganery. You can be a really good amateur and you could still be a master. You could be a master garber and still be learning new cool ways to do various sewing and stitching methods. You shouldn't have to know every single little thing about every single thing. And one of the things that really bothered me when I was working towards my masterhood is that I would get feedback being like, you've got to try something new that nobody else has ever seen before, type feedback, which was like, yeah, awesome as an idea. And that means that the next person coming behind after me has to also come up with something that no one else has ever really done in a, you know, large quantity or people have never really seen before esque thing. It's like we should be building the community and pushing the limits of what we have learned to do as an artisan. But also, if I have achieved same level or better of skill and knowledge in a thing that someone else has already gotten a masterhood for doing the same stuff, I should not have to do what they do better to be able to qualify for the same level of award as that person. That doesn't make sense. That's a shifting goalpost, and that's not okay. That's messed up. So, Master Owl to me thing means at least from the perspective of what I do, because I don't do woodworking and stuff that other people do. So like I can't comment on other people's woodworking and things because I know lots of people do really cool shit with like making chests, chairs, or ballistas, things like that. I can't speak to that because that's not my area of expertise. But like if I'm doing leather work and I am doing some cool stuff and other people are also doing cool stuff at the same level as me or better, because I'm like not the best leather worker ever. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty okay. There's other people that are way better than me. Like if they're doing that, they should also be masters. It's pretty straightforward. Um,
So, would you say that a drive to learn more about your craft should also be considered for masterhood? Like
um,
wanting to
yeah,
constantly improve yourself?
yeah, I mean, I don't think that you can become a master without showing progressive growth in your discipline, unless you already do something professionally and you already do things at such a high level that like it's hard to show growth when you're already doing things that are better than anyone else and no one can give you feedback because you know better than them and you're doing it better than them. Like, but if you're like an amateur like I am and you had to sort of learn as you went, like my first leather project, my first like real leather project that I did was a set of leather greaves for myself. And I would never make them like that again. That was that was pretty crappy, but they worked. And then I learned how to do it better. And I made more greaves for myself. And I've done them better. And, I've learned from how to do it piece by piece. Yeah. Like, yeah, you should be making progressive steps to be trying to learn and get better at the thing.
But what responsibilities come with being recognized for non-combat contributions? And if you're a fighter, do those responsibilities interfere or clash with your other aspects of the game?
Aspects of non-combat contributions, and does being a fighter necessarily interfere with or impede your ability to participate or the participation of others in non-combat? Is that what the question was?
So it was more of like, okay, so let's say you're recognized for service. How would that interfere with you as a fighter wanting to fight and do the fighty wagons?
It sucks because honestly, if you're trying to do service, if you're trying to participate in non-combat related things that, and it doesn't even have to be service per se, but like non-combat activities oftentimes coincide with like a battle game or a tournament, a fighting tournament. And so then that can be problematic for your participation in the non-combat stuff. And that I think can be kind of disappointing for people. Like I wanted to participate in some of the non-combat stuff. Again, I go back to this Kingdom Fall Coronation, How to Train Your Dragon. Like there were some non-combat things that were happening coinciding with a couple of the battle games. I ended up teaching a whole class on leatherwork. I taught it in as a service. I volunteered myself. I taught a leather tooling class, and I missed out on one of the bigger battle games of the day um, on the Saturday of the event. So I just had to miss that, and I was okay with that. But in a perfect world, I would have not missed it and would have been able to teach my class. But like with anything, you have to pick and choose what your priorities are sometimes. That's not to say that all non-combat stuff should be happening at the same time as like the big cool things that have the bigger draw from more players. Not that I'm saying that the non-combat stuff shouldn't have a big draw. Should have a big draw, ideally.
No
Leatherworking
way.
class had a maximum load of people of like 10 people that I could properly provide services for. And that's not even proper. Like that's just me like stretching myself to my limit to provide services for. And luckily, it was only like 6 people that were actually like learning and doing the thing because it was a take your own project home class. I
Mm.
didn't want people to just like watch me tool. That's boring. Like anyone can fucking do that. That sucks. Go watch a video online. You can see people do it better. Go and take the leather and do the thing, learn how it works, and fail at it in a safe setting where someone else is providing the materials for you type situation. But yeah, so like I prioritized doing that. I did not prioritize participating in the game, and that can be really disappointing. It was particularly disappointing for me, but like I also got over it because I was like, this is my priority. I think it sucks when um, non-combat stuff is supposed to be having a fairly large draw, and um, people don't get the draw to their non-combat activity, event, etc., because something that is more desirable for the fighters is happening concurrently with it. Especially if there are people that would like to do both but can't because of time, um, or timing rather. Um, and sometimes it's important to figure out scheduling wise, especially at events, ways to make sure that those big events that are both combat and non-combat focused get their time in the limelight.
Yeah, it's always sad to me when I see people who are involved in both spaces, like having to choose which one they want to do. In a perfect world, days would be longer and we would be able to go to all the things, but unfortunately, you know.
And also, like events can be really physically exhausting, even if you're not actively playing in every game or even any of the games. To be honest, like it can just be exhausting being there. Anyway, like it can be hard to have that energy when you need to.
And what skills would you say you've developed the most on your paths to your respective masterhoods?
Volunteering wise, I have learned how to organize teams in ways
Hmm.
that, I'd never have to be challenged. I've never been challenged to do before, and create duty rosters and things like that. Picking up trash is not a very complicated skill, so I guess I technically didn't learn much there. I did trash crat after getting a masterhood one time because like we still need volunteers. Service wise, I don't think I've learned a whole lot other than like organization pieces. In acting on the board of directors, I've learned a lot about like the way that budgeting and making sure that paperwork for insurance and things like that get taken care of, because that is one of the things that I have to supervise now. I get to see all of the really fun and cool and definitely not depressing aspects of going over ban appeals and
Um,
having to collect and go over evidence and testimony and stuff like that. And that's the
mhm.
skill that I learned there is like how to try and parse information as logically and without the not necessarily discounting the emotional, but like not having that at the forefront of my thought processes for like dealing with those sorts of things. That's been fun. Fun isn't the right word. It's been an interesting experience. Um,
Yeah, so you would say that having to juggle the legal and emotional aspects of that. I know that's one of the biggest things that I've heard people say about working on the BOD is that, suddenly they have to think a lot more about legal liabilities and whatnot.
yep. And making sure that you follow that non-disclosure agreement (NDA). Very important for legal aspects of things. It's something that I can now add to my resume is that I'm currently acting on a board of directors for a nonprofit. So that's cool, I think. In terms of getting my masterhood for Battlemaster, there's not a whole lot that I can point to in terms of skills that I've learned because I think that the way that I view like battle gaming and strategy and stuff is like, of course, you read the rule book, you learn the rule book, you practice the rules, you observe the things, you see how there are like general meta games of the way that certain classes behave and stuff. But most of the skills that I use in battle gaming center around video game logic for team combat, in particular like League of Legends and other MOBA type things, where you can take sets of players that perform in certain roles, and they do stuff in those roles in a certain way, either effectively or ineffectively, and how do you channel them into their most effective path and get them to win in a way that doesn't require you to actively coach them in the middle of a game. Not that, communication isn't important and a key aspect of winning, but like, how do you do it in such a way as to reduce the need for active communication because people know what they are supposed to be doing and are paying attention to it. For, my owl stuff, I have just learned, or like all of the things that I've done in my art stuff, garbing, leatherwork, metalwork, things like that. I have just like learned how to do some really cool things, like how to pattern stuff, how to get proper measurements for things, how to adjust when things don't work the way you want them to, or they don't fit right, whatever it might be. Like even right now, while I'm wearing my armor while I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh, the back of this might need some adjustment in order to sit more comfortably, or not necessarily comfortably, because it's not uncomfortable, but like maybe it doesn't fit quite right in a certain way or whatever it might be. Like little things that I can do that like I didn't know how to do before, and I've just sort of figured it out, and I'm not afraid to screw it up because I've messed around with it enough that it's like pretty chill. I've learned how to rivet things. I've learned how to paint more goodly, betterful, strong, bestly. And I got I have little hobby things that I can do. I don't have to just make armor. I can make all kinds of things out of leather now that I didn't know how to do before. Like, although I guess this is kind of in the same ballpark. My brother and sister-in-law asked me to make a little leather quiver for my 7-year-old nephew, 6-year-old nephew. He's not 7 yet, for Christmas.
Oh.
And I did, and it was cute and cool, and he was so hyped. And all I did was I was like, I'm gonna make a trapezoid of leather and snip it down to this size and punch some rivets into it and glue in the bottom so I don't have to actually sew it, and then just make sure that I make the straps right. Cool. That's all stuck together. Took me 3 hours, something like that. And that was just with me like fiddling around. And it's not like I even did it with true proper procedure of like letting the leather dry after dyeing it and stuff like that. I was like, it's dry to the touch right now. I'm gonna go ahead and coat it. That looks good. It looks good 24 hours later. It looks good 48 hours later. We're good. And there's like little things that I've learned how to do. Where can I cut corners in certain aspects? And where can I do things the right, quote unquote, right way so that things turn out really good or even higher quality? Or like in the case of his little leather quiver, actually it turned out really, really nice despite the fact that I cut corners. Like it was still pretty good. Like I'm quite pleased with it. Everyone who saw it when he opened it up on Christmas Day, and like there were 20 something people in the house. I wasn't there because I was sick with the flu. There were 20 something people in the house that were there. They all saw it. They were like, "That's amazing! Wow, you mean he made that by hand?" And they were like, "Yeah, he made it by hand. Like he made this for our kid." I was like, you know, I do good work.
Yes,
I
you
do
do.
good stuff, and it's like, and I've fiddled around with it enough that I know how to do it so that it still looks good and it doesn't take you a million years to get it done.
So, we are closing up here.
Okay.
I've never interviewed somebody so thorough yet who's like answered literally most of my questions. I really enjoyed it. And I honestly
Good.
think that people would probably appreciate listening to you talk about your cool stuff more than they would at me asking like 500 questions with cool little Haliax interludes. As everyone here knows, you are a good fighter, yes. So,
I'm pretty okay. I'm not top tier. Um
well, still stands, you're a really good fighter. So I
okay.
actually
Thank
put together some fighter and non-combat questions
you.
because
Okay.
I'm trying to get input from y'all as well.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
um, alrighty. So, did your perspective on Amtgard change when you started shifting away from primarily combat to garbing and other things, or
So I think that might not really be the perspective that I would take with regard to my Amtgard career. My Amtgard career has predominantly been doing my arts and sciences, non-combat, volunteering, etc., alongside the aspects of combat. Like I have always engaged in both areas the entire time. I haven't always been a stick jock. I haven't always been a battle gamer. I have always been someone who dabbles in everything, which is why when you asked, when you preface this with saying that like I'm a pretty good fighter, I would say that I am above, I don't know, above average is not necessary. I am better than 60% of Amtgarders at Wacky Bats, and I am better than 70 to 80% of Amtgarders in battle games for various things. But I know enough to be dangerous in all areas. But I've never shifted away from fighting or toward fighting from
Mhm.
non-combat related things. I've always kind of dabbled with both because I think it's important to do all of it.
And I appreciate you clarifying your perspective on that too, because like a lot of the people who do both fighting and non-combat, like at least the ones I've interviewed, start out with fighting. So it's really cool to interview someone who's been doing both,
Yeah, I like I
like
said,
the
I've been
whole
doing
time.
both nearly the entire time. I was introduced to the combat aspect, but I also like saw the cool art stuff and I was like, I want to do that too. And so I pretty much immediately was like, I need to do that.
What advice would you give to fighters who are interested in non-combat aspects of the game but don't really know where to start?
Before I just jump in with my flippant answer, I'm going to say my flippant answer. Pick something you think is cool and go do it. That's the semi-flippant answer, but also it's sort of serious. Like if you see something that you think is really nifty and you're like, I think maybe I want to try that. I think I might enjoy that. Go learn how to do it. Ask somebody who does it and like go and figure it out. I still haven't dabbled in blacksmithing, but I've done some reading on it because I thought that I might, I thought that I might start blacksmithing at one point. I was very motivated to. I never did. There are plenty of people that are real good at the wacky bats, real good at spell casting and stuff that are like also they decided to go dabble in leatherwork. They decided to go dabble in blacksmithing. They decided to go dabble in making their own garb. Like don't be afraid to try it. Like pick something you want to be like, all right, I want to try this out. See if maybe I want to get good at it. And go do it. Maybe you're a fighter that wants to have a shield that you have never seen someone make quite the right shield for what you want. Figure out how to make that shield. Go learn how it works. Make yourself a simple one with a cloth cover that you sewed together out of scrap fabric or some shit. Or explore the world of plastidip. Try something. You can't get good at something until you actually like go and attempt it. But like, don't be afraid to go pick something up and go test it out and then see if you like it.
Yeah.
Find something cool as hell and go make your own version of it.
I guess my only other question that hasn't really been answered yet is have you found that fighters and service-oriented players understand each other really well? Or how would you bridge that gap if there is one?
I would say that I think a majority of your Amtgard players have this expectation that events are going to happen and somebody's going to make it work. I don't think this is a majority of players at this point. A small minority of those players who never volunteer and never actually actively contribute bitch and moan about things not going well in certain aspects. Like maybe the battle games were subpar for certain parts of it. Maybe the tournament was run inefficiently or something like that. But then they didn't volunteer to make those things work better, or they didn't go and share their ideas about how they could improve things in a way that was beneficial or provided appropriate feedback in a constructive and empathetic way. There's a minority of players who just like to complain about things not doing or not going well. But that is a piece of the larger community of players who just and don't participate in the other aspects of making events work, making the game work, participating in leadership, participating in every part of the non-combat piece, whether it be volunteering or creating activities or whatever it might be.
and they complain about those, or the small group complains about those not being up to whatever they want it to be, and the larger group just doesn't do that ever. And then you have the people that make everything work because they're always the ones that are volunteering. They're always the ones that are stepping up, and then they get burnt out. That is something that I think could easily shift if we just, I'm not saying have a requirement, but have a very strong push where you have volunteer benefits. I don't know. Benefits is like, again, a requirement not being there, but like a push towards incentivizing volunteering rather than just through awards, but like making it not a requirement, but like something that pushes towards requirement-esque things. And I think one way that this could be done is that you could become a quote unquote warlord and never become a sword knight, because a sword knight should also be participating as a knight in other aspects of what makes Amtgard work: volunteering, teaching, leadership, etc. They should not be just going and hitting people with sticks until they are acknowledged with a piece of paper and then somehow get knighthood on top of that. They should be also doing things that a quote unquote knight should be doing, acting in a way that builds the community in a positive way rather than just beating everyone to death with their swords. That's not the way it should be.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you some closing questions. What is one lesson you've learned from Amtgard that you carry with you?
I can be both very technical and very artistic at the same time. And I think what I mean by that is that like I can have my background is in chemistry. So like I have my like STEM education thing, but Amtgard has allowed me to be expressive with my art, with the things that I like to do in ways that I otherwise probably would not be doing.
Do you feel like Amtgard is different than when you started, or has it not really changed too much?
I think my perspective on it has changed. I don't think the game itself has changed a lot. Yes, like there's been updates to the rulebook in general, I think for the better. I still think that assassin having archetypes is stupid because, or at least not archetypes. I think assassin having trickery as a thing that a game is stupid in the rulebook. I think that Amtgard in general has stayed pretty consistent. Um, I think it depends on the community that you look at. I am relatively new to my kingdom, and what I have seen from it thus far has been pretty consistent, but it has been a very warm and welcoming place for a majority of things. That is not to say that it's always like that in every single instance, but like the overall feel of Crystal Groves has been very actively warm and welcoming and positive in a way that I think the Rising Winds could benefit from. There is a general feel in the Rising Winds, I think, of cliquishness and divisiveness around award culture that I don't see as much of here in the Crystal Groves. I think that different kingdoms and different communities could learn from each other in certain ways. Yeah, I think that Rising Winds being as big as it is has a lot of differing opinions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think that the way that people view award culture there can sometimes get a little too serious and not as chill, and remembering that this is a fantasy goofball game full of people that are just trying to have a good time. And at the end of the day, awards are not as serious as everyone wants to make them be sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, in general, bitch and moan when somebody gets Battlemaster over me. And at this point, I did. Actually, I'm not going to bitch and moan about that because, again, we're in a fantasy goofball game, and everybody can just have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the awards are cool. It feels good to be recognized, and I really certainly like getting my Masterhood stuff and like Paragon and all that stuff. Like it's really cool, and I can still have a good time playing the game without those things.
A side note real quick, you're Paragon Assassin, right?
Yes, and Paragon Anti-Paladin.
That's the
Working
other
on
one.
Bard now. Working on Bard.
So, how has Amtgard impacted your life outside of the game?
There's been some positive aspects and some negative aspects. I think my art in particular has been something that most people, when they see it or when I show it, they're like, "That's amazing! That's so cool! You can do that!" Most people, they think that's super cool, and they're like, "Wow, you do that! That's awesome!" And then also I have to think about like how much time do I spend doing it, and what areas of my life have I neglected as a result of that. And so it also has those negative effects too, on a more sobering note. Like if you put yourself into something too much for long periods of time, you can miss out on other aspects of your life that you otherwise might have participated in it. Positive part, I have really cool hobbies that I really enjoy doing, and I've made a lot of cool friends as a result of that. Some of them are going to be lifelong friends that I will never stop like being buddies with, even if I don't play the game. And, negative effect, it is a time sink, right? Busy on most every weekend. You're busy doing stuff during the week to prep for X weekend. You've got another event that you're going to go and do. You're running this thing. You're doing this. You've got a board meeting. You've got blah blah. These are all things that take up time and like might adjust my priorities in certain instances.
What do you hope your legacy in Amtgard will be?
I already know what my legacy is. Oh, that's that guy that makes that fucking sick ass armor. That's my legacy. But also, when I no longer am able to move as fast as I currently can, that day is coming sooner than later, actually, at this point. Getting to be one of them old guys. My knees aren't quite as good as they used to be. I'm not that old. Like my body doesn't move as fast as it used to. Though I could probably fix that if I tried. Other aspect I want people to remember that like, man, he was really cool to talk to. I really appreciated him after that battle game. Wow, he was like on the field doing the thing, and I remember being there and seeing him do it. And then afterwards, he came up and talked to me and then said, I did such a cool job shutting him down. And he acknowledged me to my face. That's something I want people to remember and think about. And I know that that's something that I currently try to do. Also, the cool sick ass armor. And also, oh man, he actually showed me how all this actually works this one time. And now I feel inspired and I'm going to go try this thing type situations.
How do you see Amtgard growing in the future, or where do you see it growing?
Well, I think that there has been, I said that there wasn't a huge change in Amtgard overall, but I will say that there has been growth in non-combat, at least from what I have been able to observe. Being from the Rising Winds, seeing Crystal Groves. I don't know how Crystal Groves was before I got here, but like they have a much bigger emphasis on non-combat culture. I think that there are areas that it could still improve in, but like they have done a better job of integrating that into their events than Rising Winds ever did. But I've seen that Rising Winds is trying to make that a bigger piece. So I hope to see more growth in non-combat aspects of the game. It would be cool to see a little bit more of an emphasis on role play and its impact on the combat. I would like to see role play around combat. I would like to see people uh, in their garb actively fighting, not just using the Amtgard rules of play to cast spells, but like acting out a little bit of the interaction between their characters in
Mhm.
some way. Like when I get terrified on the field, I like make a point of being like, "Oh my God, it's so scary" or whatever, and like it'll be goofy, silly, like making it interesting and funny, or like you get awed, be like, "Wow, that's amazing! I can't get any." Anyways, things like that, little interactions that you can do on the field to make it feel more immersive and not just fighty whacks with screaming. And then like building in like actual role play aspects of it, like having some story involved. And you can do Night Quest is probably the best aspect of this, but like I also think Night Quest should be done during the day and not at night. I fucking hate it at night.
I can't see what I'm doing at night. It sucks. It should be day quest. Day quest should be something like that. Should be a more active piece of, if not full scale kingdom events, then something. It would be
Mhm.
cool to have day quest as like the main draw for one of the days of a kingdom level event. I think that would be cool as hell. It really does need to be done the right way, um,
Yes.
because you're gonna lose a huge chunk of audience if it's not just like a fucking cool ass battle game. People are questing. You got to make it worth their time. But yeah, I want to see more. I want to see more non-combat role play and integration of those things into semi-combat or combat experiences in some way.
Well, thank you very much for attending today, Haliax. I really enjoyed listening to all of your insights with the different paths you do. You're an amazing artist and a really good fighter, and yeah, you do a lot of cool things.
I
Yep.
really enjoyed talking to you, Milla.
You.
Goodbye, audience.
Goodbye, audience.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to hear more about non-combat participants in Amtgard, consider clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. This lets me know you like my content and would like to listen to more in the future. If you would like someone specific to be interviewed, or you'd like to have me interview you, please reach out to my Discord server at Mellafalaman or message me on Facebook using my real name, Megan McLean. Thank you!